Creepy Bonfire Night Reddit Stories. Story 1. The Man Who Never Missed Bonfire Night. I'm American, but I've lived in England for over a decade. My wife Sarah is from a small village in Kent, and every November 5th we go back for Bonfire Night. It's a big deal there. Fireworks, food stalls, the Guy Fawkes effigy, and a roaring bonfire that lights up the whole green. But there's one thing I never understood. There's a man who comes every year, alone, always in the same long coat, flat cap, and leather gloves. He never talks, never eats, never watches the fireworks. He just stands near the fire, staring into it like he's waiting for something. Locals call him Old Tom. Some say he lost his family in a house fire. Others say he's just lonely, but Sarah told me something different. He never missed a bonfire night, she said once. Not since the 90s, not even during lockdown. He was out there watching the fire alone. I didn't think much of it until last year. We arrived late. The fireworks had started and the crowd was buzzing. I spotted Old Tom instantly. Same coat, same spot. But this time, he wasn't alone. He was standing behind a woman and 2 kids, just watching them. I nudged Sarah. Do you know who they are? She squinted. No, they're not from here. I kept my eye on him all night. He never moved, never blinked, just stared at that family like he was memorizing them. Later that night, we stayed at Sarah's mum's house, just a few streets away. Around midnight, I heard fireworks again. How odd, since the show had ended hours earlier. Then I heard something else. Screaming. I ran outside. A few neighbours were out too, confused. Someone said they saw flashes near the woods. Someone else said they heard gunshots, but no one was sure. The fact that it was bonfire night had masked everything. The next morning, the news broke. A woman and 2 children were found dead in their cottage. Shot. Execution style. No witnesses, no suspects. But I knew who'd been watching them. This year, on bonfire night, I didn't want to go. Sarah insisted. We can't let fear ruin tradition, she said. So we went. Old Tom was there, but this time he was staring at us. I felt it immediately, the cold, crawling dread. His eyes weren't just watching, they were choosing. I pulled Sarah aside. We need to leave now. She laughed. You're being paranoid. But I couldn't shake it. I kept watching him. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. Then, during the fireworks finale, he reached into his coat. I pushed through the crowd, heart pounding. I didn't know what I'd do. Tackle him? Scream? But when I got close, he turned and smiled. It was the first time I'd ever seen him react. He leaned in and whispered, "You're next." Then he walked away. I called the police, reported everything. They searched for him. No trace, no name, no records. But then they found something. Old newspaper clippings from 1995. A man named Thomas Griggs lost his wife and kids in a house fire on bonfire night. The fire was started by a faulty firework, one that had been illegally sold by a local vendor. Thomas went missing a week later, presumed dead. But every year since, someone connected to that vendor has died. Always on bonfire night, always during fireworks. And this year, Sarah's dad was the vendor. The fire's burning again, and I don't know if we'll make it through the night. Story 2. The Night Bus. In 2006, I was living in Ipswich. If you know your true crime, you will remember that winter. The whole town was on edge. Women were vanishing one after another, and the news was calling him the Suffolk Strangler. I was 19, working late shifts at a pub. My parents begged me not to walk home alone, but buses were still running and I told myself I'd be fine. One night, after closing, I caught the last bus. It was nearly empty, just me, the driver, and one man sitting at the back. He looked ordinary enough, mid-30s, scruffy jacket, staring out the window. But the moment I sat down, I felt it. That prickling at the back of your neck when you know you're being watched. Every time the bus passed under a streetlight, I saw his reflection in the glass. He wasn't looking outside. He was looking at me. I tried to ignore it, pulled out my phone, pretended to text. But then he moved. Slowly, deliberately, he slid out of his seat and walked down the aisle. He didn't sit near me. He sat directly across. The bus was silent except for the engine. I could feel his eyes on me, unblinking. Finally, he spoke. "You shouldn't be out this late." My throat went dry. I mumbled something about just getting off soon. He smiled. "I know." The bus jolted to a stop. My stop. I stood quickly, desperate to get away, but so did he. I stepped off into the cold night air. The bus pulled away, leaving just the two of us on the dark street. He fell into step behind me. I walked faster, so did he. I turned a corner, heart hammering, and that's when I saw headlights, a police car crawling slowly down the road. They'd been patrolling constantly because of the murders. I waved frantically. The car stopped and the officer rolled down the window. "You right, love?" Before I could answer, I glanced back. The man was gone. He vanished into the shadows. The officer insisted on driving me home, and I never saw that man again. Or so I thought. A week later, I was walking home from work again. This time, I left earlier, determined not to risk the last bus. The streets were busy, people heading to the pubs or shops. I felt safer. Until I saw him. Across the road, hood up, hands in his pockets. He wasn't moving, just standing there, watching. I froze. A car passed between us, and when it cleared, he was gone. I told myself I was imagining things, but then it happened again. At the supermarket, I caught him at the end of an aisle, staring. When I blinked, he was gone. At the laundrette, I saw his reflection in the glass door. By the time I turned, the street was empty. It was like he was haunting me. One night, I woke to a noise outside my window. Our house was 2 stories high, but when I pulled back the curtain, I swear I saw someone standing in the garden, just a silhouette. The next morning, the gate was open. I barely slept after that. Then came the night that broke me. I was walking home again, earlier than usual. The streets were quiet, the air icy. I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. It was him. This time, he didn't vanish. He smiled. "You shouldn't be out this late," he said again. The exact same words as on the bus. I bolted. My keys shook in my hand as I fumbled at the door. I slammed it shut just as he reached the garden path. I called the police, sobbing. They sent a patrol, but of course he was gone. A week later, they arrested Steve Wright, the Suffolk Strangler. His face was all over the news. But it wasn't the man from the bus. Which means, whoever he was, he's still out there. And I thank God every bonfire night, every Christmas, every time I see fireworks in the sky, that the police car came when it did. Because I don't think I was meant to make it home that night. Story 3. The Bonfire Curse. Every bonfire night, my family would gather in the garden to watch the fireworks. It was tradition. Hot chocolate, sparklers, the smell of smoke drifting through the air. But there was always one problem. My uncle David. He was the life of the party the rest of the year. Funny, kind, the sort of man who'd give you the shirt off his back. But every 5th of November, something happened to him. It started off subtle. As soon as the first firework cracked in the sky, he'd go quiet. His hands would tremble. His eyes would dart around like he was hearing something that no one else could. By the time the big display started, he wasn't himself anymore. His face would twist, his voice would drop into this low growl, and he'd mutter things under his breath. Words that didn't even sound like English. The first time I saw it, I thought he was drunk, but then he grabbed my wrist. Hard. His nails dug into my skin and he whispered, "Don't let them see you." I asked who he meant. He just stared at the sky, eyes wide, as another firework exploded. When the last rocket fizzled out, he snapped back. Just like that. Smiling, laughing, like nothing happened. And when we asked him about it, he looked confused. He never remembered a thing. The next year, I paid closer attention. As the fireworks began, I watched his whole body tense. His breathing grew ragged. He turned to me, but his eyes weren't his anymore. They were glassy, unfocused. Then he spoke. "They're coming through the cracks." I froze. "What cracks?" I whispered. He pointed upward. Another firework burst, and for a split second I thought I saw something in the smoke. Shapes, figures, like shadows writhing against the night sky. Uncle David clutched his head and screamed. The rest of the family rushed to him, but he shoved them away with a strength I didn't know he had. His voice wasn't his own when he shouted, "They want a body." The fireworks thundered, and for a moment I swear the shadows in the sky leaned closer, as if the explosions were opening some kind of doorway. Then just as suddenly, it was over. The finale ended, the night went quiet, and David collapsed. When he came to, he was himself again, smiling, confused, asking why everyone looked so pale. By the 3rd year, I was terrified of Bonfire Night. I tried to convince my parents not to invite him, but they said I was being dramatic, so I stayed inside, watching from the window. And that's when I saw it. As the fireworks lit up the sky, Uncle David's shadow stretched unnaturally long across the garden, longer than it should have. It twisted, writhing like it wasn't connected to him at all. And when the fireworks stopped, the shadow snapped back. The last time I saw him was 2 years ago. The fireworks had just begun, and he turned to me, eyes wide, and whispered, "This year, they'll take me." I laughed nervously, thinking it was just another one of his episodes. But then he smiled. Not his usual smile. Something darker. When the finale began, he walked straight towards the fire pit in the garden. His body was stiff. His movements were jerky, like a puppet on strings. We tried to stop him, but the moment the last firework exploded, he collapsed into the flames. By the time we pulled him out, he was gone. The police called it an accident, said he must have tripped, but I know what I saw. When the smoke cleared, his shadow wasn't there anymore. Now every bonfire night I stay inside, curtains drawn, lights off, because sometimes when the fireworks crackle, I see shapes in the sky, and I hear his voice whispering through the smoke. They still want a body. Story 4. The Bonfire Night Ritual. It was bonfire night, and my town was alive with fireworks. The air smelled of smoke and gunpowder, and the sky kept flashing with bursts of colour. Everyone was gathered at the main field for the huge bonfire, but I wasn't in the mood. I decided to walk instead, away from the noise. That's when I noticed him. A man in a hood, standing under a flickering streetlight. He wasn't watching the fireworks. He wasn't moving at all, just staring. When I passed, his head slowly turned to follow me. I walked faster. Then I heard it. Footsteps behind me. I cut through the woods, hoping to lose him. The trees swallowed the light, and every time fireworks lit the sky, I saw him again. Closer. Then I stumbled into a clearing. There was a bonfire here too, but smaller, controlled. Around it stood 6 figures in crude white masks. They weren't celebrating. They were chanting. Low, rhythmic, like a language I didn't know. The man chasing me stepped into the clearing. For the first time, he spoke. "You're late." One of the masked figures stepped forward and held out a mask. "Put it on." I froze. The firelight showed what they were doing. At their feet, arranged in a circle, were burned scraps of paper and bones. Animal bones, I hoped. The chanting grew louder, and I realized they weren't just celebrating Bonfire Night. They were reenacting it. Not the fireworks, not Guy Fawkes, the burning. Every year they chose someone to feed the fire. A sacrifice. The man leaned close to me. "If you don't wear it, they'll know you don't belong." My hands shook as I slipped the mask on. The group turned back to the flames, satisfied. The chanting rose and the fire flared higher. One of them pulled a bundle from the shadows, a scarecrow-like figure stuffed with straw. But as they dragged it closer, I saw something tied inside the straw. Something that moved. It was a person, gagged, struggling. My stomach dropped. The masked figures raised their arms, chanting louder, preparing to throw the body into the fire. The man grabbed my hand. "Run when I say." I didn't understand. He'd chased me here. But then he whispered, "I was chosen last year. I escaped. I've been trying to stop them ever since." The fire roared. The person screamed through the gag. "Now!" he shouted. We bolted. The chanting broke into chaos behind us. I ripped the mask off as we tore through the trees, the sound of pursuit crashing after us. We didn't stop until we hit the main road, fireworks exploding overhead. I turned on him, breathless. "What the hell was that?" He looked back towards the woods, pale. They call it the renewal. Every bonfire night, they burn someone to keep the fire alive. If you wear the mask, they think you're one of them. If you don't... He didn't finish. I never saw him again. The next morning, the police found a scorched patch in the woods. They said it was kids messing around, but I know what I saw. And every bonfire night since, I stay inside, curtains drawn, lights off. Because I can still hear the chanting when the fireworks crackle. And I know they're still out there, waiting for someone to wander too far from the fire. Waiting to feed the fire. Story 5. The Man in the Crowd. Every year, my town holds a huge firework display in the park. It's the kind of event where half the county seems to show up. Kids with glow sticks, parents with flasks of hot chocolate, and teenagers sneaking drinks in the shadows. That year, I went with my younger sister Mia. She was 12 at the time, and she'd been begging me all week to take her. The park was packed, the air sharp with cold, and the smell of fried onions and smoke drifted from the food stalls. The fireworks hadn't started yet, so we found a spot near the back of the crowd. Mia sat on the grass, fiddling with a sparkler while I scrolled through my phone. That's when I noticed him. A man, standing a few feet away, alone. At first, nothing about him seemed unusual, just another adult waiting for the show. But then I realized he wasn't looking at the sky, or the stalls, or the fireworks set up. He was staring at Mia. Not casually, not like someone who'd glanced over. His eyes were fixed on her, unblinking. I shifted, trying to block his view, but he just moved slightly to the side, still staring. I told myself I was imagining it. Maybe he was just zoned out. But then Mia tugged my sleeve. "That man keeps looking at me," she whispered. My stomach dropped. I told her to stay close and try to act normal, but my eyes kept flicking back to him. He didn't look away. The first firework went up with a shriek, exploding into gold above us. The crowd cheered, and for a moment I thought that maybe the distraction would break his focus. But when the sky lit up again, I saw his face clearly. He was smiling. Not at the fireworks, at Mia. I grabbed her hand. "Come on, let's move closer to the front." We pushed through the crowd, weaving between families and couples. I glanced back and my heart lurched. He was following. Not rushing, not shoving, just moving steadily through the people, eyes locked on us. I tried to stay calm. Maybe he was just heading the same way. But every time we changed direction, so did he. The fireworks thundered overhead, the sky flashing red and green, but all I could hear was my pulse pounding in my ears. I spotted a food stall and pulled Mia towards it. We squeezed into the queue, hoping the crowd would swallow us. I risked another glance back. He was closer now, only a few feet away. And then he raised his hand. For a split second, I thought he was reaching for Mia, but instead he held up a phone. He was filming her. I snapped. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted over the noise. He didn't answer, just kept the camera pointed at her. People around us turned, frowning. The man lowered the phone slowly and then slipped it into his coat pocket. Without a word, he melted back into the crowd. I wanted to chase him, to grab the phone, to demand answers, but I couldn't leave Mia. We stayed by the stall until the fireworks ended, my eyes scanning the crowd constantly. I never saw him again that night. Or so I thought. The next morning, Mia swore she saw him, standing across the street from her school gates, but when she blinked, he was gone. 2 days later, I spotted him myself. I was walking home from work when I noticed a figure on the opposite pavement. He had his hood up and hands in his pockets. He wasn't moving, just standing there watching. When I turned the corner, he followed. So I ducked into a shop, pretending to browse, and when I came back out, he was gone. That night, Mia woke me up crying. She said she'd seen someone outside her bedroom window. Our house is 2 stories high, so I convinced myself she was dreaming. But when I checked outside, the garden gate was open. The sightings just kept happening, always fleeting, always just long enough to make us doubt ourselves. Once, I caught him reflected in a bus window standing on the pavement as we drove past. Another time, Mia swore she saw him at the supermarket, watching from an end of an aisle. We told our parents and they called the police, who took a statement, but said there wasn't much they could do without proof. Weeks passed, the sightings slowed. We started to relax until Bonfire Night came around again. We didn't go to the park that year. We stayed home, curtains drawn, trying to ignore the distant booms of fireworks. Around 9 p.m, there was a knock at the door. My dad went to answer it, but no one was there, just a box on the doorstep. Inside was a cheap plastic mask, the kind kids wear on Halloween, and a note. See you next Bonfire Night. Story 6. the firework that followed me. I never thought a simple no could nearly cost me my life, but that's what happened the week before Bonfire Night. It started on an ordinary Tuesday. I was walking home from college, earbuds in, when a group of lads leaned against the wall outside the corner shop. They were older, maybe early 20s, hoods up, cigarettes dangling. One of them stepped forward as I passed. "Oi, love, what's your name?" I ignored him. "Come on, don't be rude. Give us your number." I pulled out an earbud. "Not interested." He smirked, glancing back at his mates. "Not interested? You don't even know me yet." "I don't want to," I said, and I kept walking. Behind me, I heard them laugh, but his voice carried after me, sharp and mocking. "You'll change your mind." I told myself it was nothing, just some creep trying his luck. But over the next few days, I saw him again, always hanging around the same corner, always watching. Sometimes he'd call out, but sometimes he would just stare. Once, I swear he followed me halfway home before peeling off. By the time Bonfire Night rolled around, I was already on edge. That evening, I went with friends to the big display in the park. The air was thick with smoke and excitement, kids waving their sparklers, families huddled in scarves. For a while, I forgot about him. The fireworks lit up the sky in bursts of gold and red, and I let myself enjoy it. Until I saw him. He was across the crowd, hood up, eyes locked on me. He wasn't with anyone this time, just standing there, still as stone, while everyone else craned their necks at the sky. I grabbed my friend's arm. "We need to go." We left early, weaving through the crowd, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being followed. Every bang of a firework made me flinch. By the time I split off to walk home alone, my nerves were shredded, and that's when it happened. I was halfway down a quiet street when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. 3 figures. Him and 2 others. My stomach dropped. "Thought you could ignore me?" he called. I walked faster. "Oi, I'm talking to you. All I wanted was your number." Then came the scrape of a lighter, the hiss of a fuse. I spun just in time to see him aiming a Roman candle at me. The first shot missed, exploding against a wall. The second hit me square in the side. Fire and pain ripped through my jacket. I screamed, tearing it off as the fabric smoldered. They laughed. Actually laughed. Another fuse. A rocket this time. I ran. The chase was a blur of alleys and explosions. Fireworks screamed past me, bursting against brick walls, showering sparks. My arm throbbed where the burn blistered, but adrenaline kept me moving. Their laughter echoed closer and closer until I burst onto a busier street. People turned, shocked, as I stumbled out, bleeding and burned. The lads, they vanished into the dark. The police came, and an ambulance too. I told them everything, but no one was ever caught. CCTV had malfunctioned. Witnesses were vague, and it was like they'd never even been there. I spent weeks in a hospital, skin grafts, bandages, endless pain. Everyone told me I was lucky, but I didn't feel lucky. I felt hunted. Because sometimes at night I'd hear it again and again, that faint whoosh of a fuse. I'd jolt awake, heart racing, but there'll be nothing there. I tried to move on. I avoided Bonfire Night the following year. I changed my routes home, but last week it started again. I was walking back home from work when I smelt it, that acrid, sulphurous smoke. My chest tightened. Slowly, I turned. At the end of the road, there were 3 figures standing, hoodies up, and one was holding a box. I blinked and they were gone. So I convinced myself it was just trauma. It was just my brain replaying the worst night of my life. But then, 2 nights ago, I found something on my doorstep. A single firework, unlit and waiting. Taped to it was a note in messy handwriting. You should have just given me your number.